Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. Today I am going to cover episodes 16 through 20 of Season 1 of Lost for my Lost Rewatch series. Please like and subscribe. Sawyer wakes up to a boar in his tent and then he chases it off. Sawyer then wants to hunt this boar down for disturbing his sleep and scaring him or whatever else it did. And he chases it off into the jungle. The boar then sneaks up on him and knocks him over, and he gets covered in mud, so he gets even more enraged at the boar. He still has the gun that he took off the marshal, and he goes back out to kill the boar once he goes to reload at his tent. After a few hours of going in circles, Kate helps him track the boar. They then stop for the night and play a drinking game, Never Have I Ever, where they both find out that they have killed someone and that Sawyer has never been in love. In the morning, they find some baby boar, and after Sawyer harasses them, Kate storms off, and Sawyer is able to track the boar, but finds out that he is not able to kill it. He doesn't have the heart to kill it because it's just an animal. Kate watches from the bushes, and then they go back to camp together, and she isn't mad at him anymore. When they reach the camp, Sawyer gives his gun to Jack to put in the case with the other guns. In the flashbacks for this episode, we have Sawyer being told by a former associate where to find the other Sawyer that he took his identity from that caused the murder-suicide of his parents, and we actually see the scene where he hears a gunshot and hides under his bed, and then his dad comes into the room, sits on his bed, and shoots himself in the head. He finds the guy after flying to Australia, and he's working at some shrimp truck, and he offers Sawyer a 50% off because he's an American, and he's really friendly. So Sawyer isn't able to go ahead and kill him. He feels guilty about it. He then goes to a bar where he meets Jack's dad, Christian, but obviously he doesn't know who Jack is at this point, but they have a conversation where Christian says that he's proud of his son and that he knows that he messed up and that Jack did what was best for both of them to progress and make sure that nobody else got hurt, but that he doesn't have it in him to pick up the phone and tell Jack that, and that would fix everything if he did. He then tells Sawyer that if he went through with what he needs to do, would it make him feel better? And then Sawyer says yes. So then Sawyer goes back and shoots the guy in the chest and starts reading off his letter that he wrote to his parents' killer about the whole thing. And the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But he turns out that he knows Sawyer's associate who told him where to find him and that he owes that guy money. And so the other guys set up Sawyer to get him to kill this guy for him. And he isn't really the person that caused Sawyer's parents' murder-suicide. And so now Sawyer seems to have a lot of regret about killing this guy. I think this is one of the weaker episodes so far in the show. It just didn't have as much going on. Sawyer had some growth, but that's about it. And Sawyer's main motivation for life right now seems to be revenge. In the next episode, Michael is almost done building the raft and just needs a few more supplies to finish it. Sawyer trades supplies for the raft for a spot on the boat. He gives them a bunch of twine to help tie everything together. In the middle of the night, the raft is burned, and everyone blames Jim because he doesn't like Michael, And obviously he doesn't speak English, so nobody knows what he's really thinking. Jin had run off and had some burns on his hands, and so the next morning Michael finds him and starts beating up Jin, and Jin doesn't fight back. Michael has a bad temper and is constantly jumping to conclusions, which really hurts the way everybody gets along, because he's always causing more things, more problems between everybody than he's actually solving, and he never seems to admit that he's wrong about anything. Sun stops the fight, saying that Jin didn't burn the boat, and surprises everybody, aside from Kate and Michael, who knew she could speak English, that she can speak English. In a way, maybe she's protecting Michael, because Jin could be dangerous or whatever. So, but this causes Jin to be really angry, because now that he knows that she can speak English, that he's obviously smart enough to figure out that something else is going on, and that she learned English without telling him. And so he's now mad at her. In the flashback, Jin is working for Sun's father at some auto factory, and one of the machines has a safety issue, and the inspector shuts it down, which is costing them a lot of money. Jin is sent to threaten the inspector so that he'll reopen the plant, but he's not able to do that when he gets there, and just tells him to reopen the plant, and that he'll forgive him if he does. And the guy is so grateful that he didn't get beat up or killed or anything, that he gives them their very expensive dog, which Jin then gives to Sun. Sun's father is mad that Jin wasn't able to get the plant reopened, and sends Jin back, this time with a hitman who's going to kill the guy so that they can get the plant reopened. Jin goes inside first and beats the guy up and tells him that he saved his life, that a beating is better than getting shot and killed over this thing. Then he's covered in blood when he gets home and is washing it off, and then Sun gets mad at him for being covered in blood and not telling him what's going on, and says the job is just, he says the job is just to do whatever her dad tells him to do, no matter what. Then he goes to go and visit his father, who he had told her was dead, but he was just ashamed of his father for being a normal fisherman and not having some big powered job like Sun's father did. And he tells his dad about that his marriage has issues, and his father says that the marriage should be the most important thing, and to not worry about Sun's father or any of the other things. So Jin plans on running away with Sun after they get to America and go to LA to deliver a watch for her father to some associate. Back on the island, Sun asks Jin if they can start over, and he tells her that it is too late and that they move back to the beach from the caves. And so he does, and she stays at the caves, and he starts helping Michael with his boat so that he can leave the island too and get the extra seat. The next episode is about Hurley, and I think it is one of the best episodes so far. Up until this episode, I enjoyed the show, but I wasn't really hooked until this one. Stuff really starts moving forward. We start learning more about the past. Like, there's a lot more going on now than there was before this episode. Hurley is shown with some documents from Rousseau that Saeed's working on with Shannon. And Saeed's talking about what he found so far, and that there's just a bunch of ramblings and song lyrics. And then it seems like there's a repeating pattern of numbers that she's constantly repeating. 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. Hurley then immediately decides that he needs to track down Rousseau and find out about these numbers. In the flashback, we find out that Hurley won the lottery with those numbers, so this is not a coincidence. After he wins the lottery, bad things start to happen. His grandfather has a heart attack. He buys his mom a house, but then when she's getting out of the car to take a look at it, she breaks her ankle, and then they notice that the house is on fire, and it burns down, and then while that's happening, the police come up and falsely arrest him for being a drug dealer. So then he goes to his money manager, who tells him that a factory that he invested in Canada burned down, but the insurance payout gives him more money than he invested, so they actually made a bunch of money. And that then while they're talking about it, a guy jumps off the building, and then you can see his body go down. So he definitely continues to think that these numbers are cursed. We also find out that he owns a box company, and Locke has said that he works for a box company. So there's another instance where the paths of the people's lives have crossed before they ended up on this island. He then decides that he needs to track down these numbers and find out what's going on. So he had originally heard these numbers when he was a patient at a mental institution and from another patient. So he goes there and is able to convince one of the doctors to let him visit with this guy, saying that they were friends. So then the guy, he tells the guy that he used the numbers to win the lottery, and the guy starts freaking out about how those numbers are bad and that he shouldn't have done that. But he's able to find out from the guy that him and this guy's friend, back when they were in the military, had overheard these numbers, and that the other guy now lives in Australia. So this is how Hurley ends up in Australia. So he goes to Australia, and he finds out that the guy's now dead, and his widow tells about the story about what happened, saying that they heard the numbers from a radio transmission when they were in the military, and that they weren't able to figure out the source. And so it seems almost like the island has created this entire loop. Like, it created these numbers and sent out, and bad stuff happened in order to get Hurley to then go track them down and then end up on this island. Back on the island, he sneaks off with Saeed's maps after talking to Saeed in the middle of the night about Rousseau. Saeed first blames Jack for stealing the map, saying that he was the one who wanted to go after Rousseau. And then they realize that it is Hurley, because Hurley had woken him up and had talked about the numbers and wanting to find Rousseau to ask about them. So Hurley finds the same cable that Saeed did down the beach and starts following it up into the jungle. He steps on a pressure plate trap right as Saeed, Jack, and Charlie catch up with him. The pressure plate is attached to a bunch of sharpened sticks in the tree, designed to swing down and impale the person. They tell Hurley to wait so that they can replace his weight with something else, but he decides to just dive for it and is luckily able to get out of the way. They then continue into the jungle, and they come across a rope bridge. Hurley goes across the bridge without an issue, but then when Charlie, even though he's much smaller and lighter than Hurley, tries to go across, the bridge snaps, and Charlie barely makes it over the bridge before it collapses. They are now split up into two groups, Jack and Saeed, and Charlie and Hurley. Jack and Saeed reach Rousseau's house, but it has traps that set off an explosion and destroys it. Charlie and Hurley realize that they are being shot at and start running off in different directions. Hurley comes across Rousseau and asks about the numbers. She doesn't want to tell him, but he is insistent, and she gives in and lowers her weapon. She says that her team of scientists heard the transmission with the numbers and changed course to figure out what they were, and they then ran aground on some rocks after doing so. And then once they were on the island, they kept looking for the transmission tower, and eventually they did find it after a few weeks near the Black Rock. Once everybody else in her group had been killed because she said they were sick, she went and changed the transmission to the one that they heard from the one with the numbers. I'm still wondering what sick actually means. Does that mean that they were actually sick, or was she just going crazy and they were not agreeing with her about what was right? Both Rousseau and Hurley realize that the numbers are bad luck, and that they both led them to the island. Hurley is relieved that someone else agrees with him about the numbers, and he hugs her. Charlie meets back up with Jack and Saeed and tells them that Hurley and him were shot at, and they are just about to go looking for Hurley when Hurley shows up and tells them that Rousseau says hi and gives them the battery that they need for the transmitter for the raft. When they get back to camp, Charlie tells Hurley about his heroin addiction, and Hurley tells him that he's worth $160 million back home, and Charlie thinks that he is joking and gets mad. The episode ends with a shot of the hatch, and the numbers are written on the side of it. So obviously, this island does have something to do with the numbers. But how can numbers have so much power, and what do they actually mean? In the next episode, Boone and Locke are still trying to get the hatch open, and have built a trebuchet to try to break the glass from the outside of the hatch. The trebuchet breaks when they try to break the glass, and Locke gets a piece of metal stuck in his leg, but he doesn't even notice until Boone says something about it, so he obviously can't feel it at all. After removing it, he tests himself with cutting himself and burning himself to see if he feels any pain, and he realizes that he doesn't anymore, so he's obviously going back to the way he was when he was in his wheelchair. Back at the camp, Sawyer is suffering from headaches, and Jack offers to help him, but Sawyer turns him down because he has this beef with Jack for no reason. But eventually he relents and gets help. Jack gets back at him for all the jokes that Sawyer's made at Jack by asking Sawyer if he had sex with a prostitute and if he's had a sexually transmitted disease before saying that Sawyer's actually just farsighted and needs reading glasses because he's been reading so much. I wonder if the books matter for what is being read towards hints towards what's going on, but I haven't actually seen what the books are yet. So Jack gets Saeed to help him combine two different pairs of glasses into creating one Franken glasses that Sawyer can wear while he reads to help with his headaches. In the flashback for the episode, Locke is working at a Walmart and is still able to walk. There's some woman that is watching him, and when he goes to leave, she's still watching him. He chases after her, is mildly hit by a car, and then catches up with her. She says that she is his birth mother, and he asks about his birth father, and she says that he was immaculately conceived. So I wonder if there's something special about Locke because of this. He doesn't believe that he was immaculately conceived, though, and he hires a private investigator to look into it. And he also does a DNA test with his mother, and they're able to prove that his mother is 99% related to him, so it definitely is really his mother. And they also are able to figure out who his father is. Locke goes to visit his father and finds out that he is rich and lives in a gated compound with a guard. He convinces the guard and his father to allow him in, and his father regrets not being there, and they start spending time together. They go hunting. Then one day he shows up and finds his dad hooked up to a dialysis machine. His dad says that he needs a transplant, but that the list is long and that it's fine for now. He doesn't need to do anything. So Locke decides to offer up one of his kidneys to help his father, and his dad accepts. They go to a hospital, and the surgery is all scheduled, and they're sharing a hospital room. And then when Locke wakes up from the surgery, his father is gone and nowhere to be seen, and had checked out earlier. And he sees his mom in the hall, and she says that she needed money, and that's why this was all a setup. They did it just to get him to give up his kidney, and this bond wasn't real. Locke drives to his father's house, but is turned away at the gate, and he's upset. And then as he drives down, he has a breakdown mentally about how he built up his father in his mind, and he finally reunited with his father, and then it turns out his father was just using him to get a kidney and wasn't actually interested in having a relationship with him. Back on the island, Locke has a dream where he sees a plane crashing and a bloodied Boone standing on the hatch repeating a phrase over and over again. Locke wakes Boone up early, and they go off into the jungle to look for the plane. Boone begins to doubt Locke, and Locke tells him about the phrase that he was repeating in the dream, and Boone says that it was about the nanny of it in his childhood who broke her neck falling down the stairs after he would repeatedly call her up over the intercom to check on him. They then come across a decaying body dressed as a priest and find a cross necklace, and a body falls down on top of them. They find a gun with the body as well, so they think that maybe it isn't actually a priest, but something else, somebody dressed as one. The closer that they get to finding the plane, the worse Locke's legs get, and eventually he collapses on the ground, but when he looks up, and he sees a plane in the canopy of some trees. Since his legs are not working, he asks Boone to climb up and see what he finds in the plane. There is another body in the plane, and they find a map of Nigeria and some Mary statues that are filled with heroin. Probably something Charlie would have been interested in, but he's clean now. Boone realizes that the radio in the plane still works and starts calling out an SOS. A voice responds and says that there were no survivors of Oceanic Flight 815. My wife made the observation that maybe they did all die in the plane crash. The plane starts to shift because Boone changed the weight of the plane, and Locke tells him to get out, but he keeps trying on the radio to get a response. Eventually, the plane's nose falls down, nose first, with Boone still inside. He is critically injured and looks just like he did in Locke's dream. Locke's legs start working again, and he is able to carry Boone back to the caves to Jack. He tells Jack that they were hunting and that Boone fell off a cliff. Locke then runs back off into the jungle to the hatch and starts pounding on the door because he is mad that the plane didn't help him open the hatch. And then, after he did, a light inside the hatch turns on. And that's the end of the episode. Boone has been critically injured after the plane falling on him, and has a collapsed lung and has lost a lot of blood. Jack asks Kate to go to the beach and get as much alcohol as she can from Sawyer. In the flashbacks, Jack is getting married to Sarah, a woman he saved in a car accident. Jack struggles to find the right words for his vows, and his dad shows up to talk to him about it. So this is obviously before they had their falling out, where Jack turned him in for drinking while operating. He tells Jack that his strength is his commitment, and that his weakness is not being able to let go. Jack waits to the last possible minute to finish his vows, and after an awkward set of vows, he says that he didn't fix her, she helped to fix him. Back on the island, Kate gets what little alcohol that Sawyer has left, which he gives her willingly, and is on her way back to Jack when she falls and breaks the bottles. She then finds Claire, who is going into labor, and Jack needs to do a blood transfusion to Boone, who is struggling, and eventually Boone is able to tell him that he has A negative blood. Jack tells Charlie to look for somebody else with the same blood type. Charlie is unable to find it because most of the people do not know their blood type. So Jack has O negative blood and is a universal donor, and tries to pierce his skin with bamboo in order to create a blood transfusion, but it doesn't work. Sun goes and gets a sea urchin, which they can use as the needle to get the blood transfusion going. Kate starts calling for help with Claire's baby delivery, and Jin, who is working on the raft, hears them and shows up, and they are able to get him to go get help from Jack. When he finds Jack, he is already doing the blood transfusion and is not able to help. He sends Charlie with supplies and instructions on delivering the baby, and says that Kate needs to be able to do it. Sun stops Jack from doing the transfusion when he starts losing color in his face, and they realize that Boone is pooling blood in his leg, and Jack finds out that Locke has lied to them because the leg had been crushed, and obviously something had fallen on top of him, not just that he fell down a cliff. Boone wakes up and tells him, so Jack tries to go and cut off his leg so that he can try to save Boone. Boone wakes up and tells him not to do it and to just let him die. Boone then tells Jack that they found a hatch and that Locke wanted him to keep it a secret. After Boone dies, Jack goes to find Shannon, who was just getting back from a night with Saeed that they spent away from camp, and Shannon had told Saeed that Boone was kind of in love with her. Boone cries over Boone's body as Jack goes to look for Locke. And that is it for this episode. I've already watched episodes 21 through 25, so I'll do a recording of that, and we will have that episode up shortly.